Good evening. I have done a little work without you, not a lot. It truly was not a lot of work. I do need to express how strongly that is true. I also noticed I managed to get it wrong, but we'll ignore that portion. In essence, all I really did was mirror the bit that we did together, and do the first diamond spidery bits. So I have not done a lot because I have been playing Oblivion and until stupid o'clock this morning, and I do mean proper stupid o'clock this morning. Just as I was about to go to bed last night at about 12:30, I noticed that the what used to be called Evercraft is now Eludian or whatever, came online as a spontaneous test. So I spent a couple of hours or so in that, and then doom scrolled for a couple of hours more. So, frankly, I only, today's been a bit weird because, well, I'm really out of whack. But then that, of course, is the joy of my time off. I do it deliberately, and that time off, I'm allowed to stay up late after all. My dog's doing strange things. So, let's get on with the show. So, here we have where I got to. As I said, we've done this bit here. I've now done this bit over here. And the bit in the middle. I tried a slightly different style bit in the middle, which I'm kind of liking. I kind of like that. So, we're going to need some of you. And some of you. So, 1, 2, 3. That's wrong. There shouldn't be 4 there. How is there 4? 1, 2, 3, 4. How on earth did I manage that? Let's undo that then. And see what the hell how I got into this pickle. So, 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. So there's only 3 there. How did I end up with 4 then? on! You are out in the garden doing dog things. You do not need to be in the middle of this. No, you don't. Neither of you. No. No, I know. You've had a good day today. You have. You have had a good day. Pups. Yes, you have. My little puppies. You're a good girl, but you're being annoying. Yes, you are. Both of you. Yes, you are. Both of you being very annoying. Because, my dear Flaps, I need my hands. And much as I enjoy huggies with the pups, and you're being fairly good for you, in fact, you're being very good for you, yes. You're both sitting still to have a hug, which is quite rare, so I don't want to jeopardise the success, because you are being good. But I kind of wanted to do some lace making. I do. I do want to do some lace making. Rory, no, you don't need to hold my hand. No. Stop trying to hold my hand. I don't want to be licked, little man. No. So, how am I supposed to do my lace making if there are little doggies in the way? Because you've had dinner, I have not. Now I've started streaming, I realise that I'm a lot hungrier than I thought I was. Yes. Yes, little puppies. Now, my little magic puppies. Yes. Can I get on with my lace thing now? Can I please? Please? I know you're in the way. Yeah, that's a good girl. You back out a little bit. You sit there. There. Right. And Rory, you move your head, and then everybody's good. See, something's not right because they're crossed. So, let's unpick that and try and work out how the hell I crossed those even though I didn't cross them. So, see, that's because you are not ready. Looks a bit better. Yeah, that looks a lot better. we are making an experimental strip of nothingness. To match, funnily enough, its identical brother, this one. I am making these because I need to practice the joining of strips and trying to make them invisible, or as near invisible as I think I'm ever going to master. Because obviously, well, there is really a definition of the difference between the two. So, because I don't expect it to be absolutely invisible, I just don't want it to be screamingly obvious either, if you know what I mean. Because one of the things that, as we all know, is that when I make my squares for my net curtain, we all know, because, well, they're squares, that when I join them together, it's going to look like squares joined together. Now, to a large extent, this isn't a bad thing. It's not a wrong thing. I knew this when I started. But I have been somewhat more and more obsessed with the idea of the one. Something that looks like it was made in one piece. And the problem of trying to make it look like it was in one piece is I know that I just could not handle that many bobbins in the field of play, right? I mean, this 3-inch section, sorry, my internet fired briefly. This 3-inch section is nearly 100 bobbins. So if you're talking, I can't remember exactly how wide I worked it out to be. It was something like 19 inches. Well, that's nearly 600 bobbins. It was probably about 600 bobbins. Well, it is, and that's where my problem comes. Because it's 100 for 3 inches, 600 of the blessed things then for, say, 19, 20 inches, being generous and underestimating slightly for easy numbers, that's just not funny. It's just not funny. And it is already hectic enough with 100 bobbins. Now, I do have a bolster cushion that is wide enough to make a 20-inch wide piece. But with 600 bobbins hanging off the back of it, I'd also have to book me a few weeks, likely years, in the funny farm to cope with it. I just can't mentally handle the idea. Now, I have seen pictures of women making really big things on bolster cushions with an almighty truckload of bobbins, and dog, you're going to get a slap. Just come here. But, yes, you come round the long way, and then there's plenty of room for Rory's. Yes. Hello, Rory's. But, 600 bobbins is just not funny. Rory, darling? Really? Really? Little man. That's a whisker up my nose. Excuse me a moment while I am attended to by the dog. What? What? I love you dearly, but really, little man, just lie down. Lie down and have hugs. Please. Lie down. Lie down. Not on the cushion. There. You lie down there. I can work sort of around that. Right. So, this then logically means that I am hampered as to how wide a piece I can make. Now, the squares are basically the same number of bobbins that I've got here. Literally, in fact, because one strip works out as half a square. It's just that we're making strip of, not square. Now, obviously, the advantage of strip is I can make it a lot longer and therefore make columns for mine. So if I'm currently reckoning it's 3 squares wide, I would therefore need 6 strips, which are a lot longer than the ones I'm making, because I'm making them only the height of a square because I'm lazy. But, you know, I would need to make them, say, 6 times as long, and then join them together. And if I can do a invisible enough join, then it's, you know, it'll look like I did one piece and it'll be great. Now, the normal lace joining technique is quite practical and simple, and I really thought was going to be the answer. Now, I don't know if I used the wrong under, under, but to be honest, it's going to be the same either way, because, you know, if I go over from one side... Oh, stop licking my hands. You're a pain. You are. I don't mind normally when they lick my hands a little bit, but after a while it gets a little bit annoying, because I do get cold hands and my hands get painful, so I don't really need dog slob on them. No. But, you know, if I can make 6 strips, for example, join them together and have it look as one, from you know, maybe not real up close and personal, you know, maybe, because I'm sure you can tell if you're that close, but from, you know, a reasonable standing distance or so, as long as it doesn't scream, hey, you know, fudged line here, you know, this would be good. Now, the lace normal technique of joining is to pull up, if you've got a pair of bobbins, you pull up through the pinhole a loop from this one and poke this one through it, which you would think is going to be fairly similar to 2 pairs of bobbins dancing together. Rory, you can't get any more on my lap. Stop licking my fucking hand. Just you're having a hug in the most awkward time of my life for you to want hugs. Yeah. So we ditched that fairly quickly. So now we're back to the making 2 identical strips and joining them off the pillow. Now this has considerable concern in my eyes, because obviously I've got to get the tension right, and I would need to use needles to do the work. And I have in my mind how it should be fitting, but there is concern that it will show drastically. Now, there is an option that says, if it shows drastically, you know, give it something to look at, almost, right? So instead of a humble join, make a really flamboyant join. You know, make it bright pink or something, and make it deliberately stand out. Now, this is also basically an option. But I would like to try for the historically possible version, where something very similar to this had a master lady whose sole purpose in life was to join lace strips together. For the big Chantilly lace shawls that they made were not made in one piece. They were made in strips. And in fact, could be found if you go to Etsy and have a bit of a search. There is a strip claiming to be from such, not a strip of lace, a pattern strip, claiming to be that very kind of thing. There is a lady on YouTube who sadly frustrates me entirely, who has done a video explaining that she spent a week on a course learning all about it. That's really nice, because that's all she says. So, flex, I know how to do it. Well, I'm glad you got a grant to go around Europe learning lace, because most of us work for a living. Most of us would have to pay for ourselves. Most of us would be interested in learning it so it doesn't die out. But no, you've chosen to just basically flex that you got to go. It's a bit like the rich kid who, oh, well, of course, every year we winter in the Hamptons. It's that kind of flex. And this is kind of why she annoys me, is that next to none of her videos are actually of her making lace. Now, there are some snippets of her throwing some bobbins about and making lace. And there is one that claims to be 200 hours of her making thing. And I don't dispute that. But at the same time, it's kind of the only one. There's a few things where you see her in front of a lace pillow, but you don't actually really see what she's doing. But it's almost like a photo of this, and that'll be it. There's a photo of it, or her sitting at a table in front of, holding up a bobbin like this sort of thing, and that'll be it. And so she talks about some of the historical things because she is a historian apparently, but she doesn't actually give details. She mentions that she has been lucky enough to, and then doesn't really tell you anything about it. And that winds me up because clearly it's something that we don't tend to do anymore. And that I'm really glad that some ancient wise woman in France is available should you have enough money and the ability to go there and the ability to spend a week or whatever learning about it. But to the rest of us, we want it in a book. We need it in a YouTube video because we would like to learn too. And everything I do here, all of my neck curtain that I'm doing, I've done on stream. Some of my experiments I have progressed marginally off stream, but then the first thing I do is come and tell you what I've been up to. And when it comes to the joining, because, well, I will probably try a bit off stream because there are a number of options that come to mind. Most of them suck, potentially, but we will see. But it is that kind of aspect, is that I want to share. Now, these wavy bits here, I had to work out how they happened. Now, I swear I saw something very like it on a picture on the internet. Can't find it for love nor money. So, it may have come to me in a dream. But at the same time, I made it happen. And a lady who runs a fairly well-known central, beginners kind of library, for want of a better word, on lace making. So she's got dotted paper, she's got some basic patterns, she's got how to do each of the stitches and some of the variations. She has now added my waves as the a final. And if you do this with it, you can make the waves by doing this, right? So, I'm not going to say I invented it, because I'm really sure I didn't. But it's a pattern I vaguely saw. Now, maybe my brain saw half a pattern, dreamt the rest of the pattern, because we all know that dreams do this. Because, when we dream, we solve problems in our lives. And it was a thing where people had done kind of like next to each other. Rory, you can't push the thing over, right? Look, dog ear, look. Can you not? Really? I'm hanging desperately onto the thing. It was not there as your pillow, my man. No, it's not here as your pillow. I know you love it. And it would be a good doggy pillow. Yes. Anyway, while Rory is enjoying my lace pillow, you annoying bag of fur. But So I'm not pretending I made it, because it's a pattern I'd seen. But what I'd seen was that in a collection of spiders put together, most people had only ever done 3 and then stopped. I've continued it on to make the waves. And it was almost a perchance, because as you can see, the edges of these spiders work as normal. So if you had enough of them, you either end up with, like this one here, what's known as a spider ground kind of effect going on. And that's a bit more like a Flanders ground, to be totally frank. And I don't, we all know I was not a fan of Flanders. It's not that I hate it. It just seemed a lot of extra work, because, of course, if I was doing this in Flanders, it would be a lot thicker, which is kind of counterproductive for a net curtain. You want lighter and delicate, not chunkier and butcher. But there'd be twice as many bobbins. Can you now imagine making a one-piece in Flanders thing? No, instead of 600 bobbins, you'd need 1,200. The word fucking off can be arranged into a sentence of my choosing for that one. Because, no. I mean, I can't imagine 600, let alone 1,200. I mean, the cost alone of the bobbins would be prohibitive. I mean, these bobbins are fairly cheap. Some bobbins are reasonably cheap. But they're still usually 50 odd pence a go. Well, that means you need £600 worth of bobbins. Now, obviously, you reuse them, but you still need to have bought £600 of bobbins. Fuck off. Turn into a bit like a chicken. Fuck off. It is one of those things. So, could I afford to spend £600 on bobbins? If I really wish to, yes. For it is my hobby, and I live with no one else to judge me. So I can, very much arguably, put 600 notes into buying some bobbins. But it's not I don't really want to spend. I mean, if I was going to do that, I'd be buying, I worked out, because I'm really obsessed with the idea of getting some ebony ones. Not this shape, but getting some ebony ones. And I can get ones this shape in ebony, but it's like £400 for 100, right? So it'd be £400 worth of bobbins just to make these strips. That hurts, Now, I really want them, but that hurts. That's a little bit unnecessary. I've got other bobbins, and it is only because I want the colour of the wood. Let's back it up here. I don't need to spend that kind of money, so I'm not. But it doesn't stop me looking at them a lot. Of course, I will look at them many times. So I find it difficult because I want to improve. I want to do things. I am excited by things. The problem is the speed of making the test swatches, for want of a better word, is really limiting. Now, we all know that it takes Liz about a month to make a square. Interestingly, it took less than a week to make a strip, thus suggesting strips would generate the content of the net curtain sufficiently faster. This is a good thing, because then it would, probably take 4 or 5 months. Well, it would take the best part of, let's arguably call it 36 weeks. So, it's like 5 months. Now, of course, the joining together, with a straight line, it's really quite easy. I could do it on the sewing machine. I can do it by hand. I can, there are a bunch of options. Doing these together, well, until I've worked out the best way of doing it. But I'm going to guess that it is a much more laborious process. So it might even take a month or so to join them all together. But it's still nearly a third of the original time frame that I expected. After all, I've done seven squares and a couple of trips to to do some Bucks points, a little bit of a trip to do some Flanders, and last week I made one strip, and this week I'm making a strip. Because some of the joinings will be easily unpickable, some less unpickable. So the traditional lace join technique would have been a bitch. So when after an inch of it, it looked like it was turning out as a straight line, and that was because as effectively a half hitch forms by the loops that these make, it basically meant that 4 bits of thick string were making a line where the 2 kind of points met, so it was making a line in the middle, so it looked like a line, which was the whole point not to, after all. So, and because I can't poke these through the tiny little bubbles, because if you notice, this doesn't have a straight edge. It kind of looks like a straight edge. I'm praying Rory will stay still there. But if you look, it's not a straight edge. It's made out of loads of little peaks, she says slightly off camera. Loads of little peaks. And so to join things together, the plan is, not that I can easily demonstrate it, but that the peaks on one will join up with the peaks on the other, and that they will make like little butting together shapes, so that, you know, one thread realistically will join it all together and you kind of scoot round. But that's still gonna be complicated. And, well, I haven't quite worked out how... Well, I know how it works in my head. But, well, that's my head, right? What I may have to do is pin it to this, and then to try and keep them evenly together and lined up, and not allow it to pull it too far out of commission, and all of those kind of moments. That's right, there's still a dog here, look. Dog here. Because he is very comfortable. And I'm glad he's comfortable, because I'm not. I'm not so comfy, my man. I'm not. I do love you dearly, but can you not push... No! Do not be pushing it off the other side. That's not a thing. No. You can sit on my lap, but you're not pushing it off. No, you're not. So I have plans and thoughts and ideas, but to make test strips to join them together, because of course you need them to be reasonable. So did they really need to be 3 inches wide and, like, you know, 5.5 inches long or whatever it is? Well, nearly 6 inches long. The answer is yes. Because you need to be able to tell from a distance, is that, you know, if when joined together, how much it shows up compared to the rest of the lace. Because obviously if it was, say, an inch apart, there isn't really a lot between them, and if you've got a number of different options that you've been trying, you need kind of bits in the middle to decide what you're looking at, where you're looking at it. Is the join really visible? Is it in your imagination because you know where to look? You know, because some of them could be, as I said, really, really majorly showy, almost as much as the little wave shape on here. Now, to an extent, that's not necessary. Rory, can you stop leaning on it? He's really not helping. But it is I want to try. Because if I can't find a way of making mostly invisible joins, well, then my brain can shut up about making it in one piece. It can just go do one. Until it discovers a way to join them together in a mostly, you know, invisible manner, it can shut up about, you know, making one that looks like it was made in one piece. Because, as I said, 600 bobbins? No. 1200 bobbins? Definitely no. maybe 600 bobbins in like 10 years time when, you know, maybe I'm feeling a little bit more, you know, laissez-faire about it all. But until then, no. And it is this kind of catch-22. Knowing that it could be done does help. You know, it is that kind of moment, right? It is you want to, you know that it's possible, so that's a good thing. Now, you also know that these women dedicated their lives to it, and their sole profession was joining shit. So you know it's not an easy thing. and with that in mind, having to reinvent it with not a lot of assistance, because little Miss Gatekeeper is, you know, not helping. And there doesn't actually seem to be any records of she didn't actually name her, I don't think, but there didn't seem to be any form of records about the place or whatever that she mentioned. So I don't know how she found out about it. Chances are someone in her university thing that she's doing it on behalf of found it for her, or sent out kind of messages, you know, in semaphore or something. And so, you know, it all kind of piled together, and someone probably reached out with, hey, if you send her here, we can give her a course. You know, old Mrs. Biggins, who lives down the road, has agreed to come in and teach her for a week or whatever it is. And it may not even be a commercially available course that we can all do. It might have been this one-off, you know, Mrs. Biggins has hereby agreed to do it on you know, so that to do this for her as a special event kind of thing. And so, you know, it is, which might be why, of course, can't find any information on it. That's right, my knots done funky things. Oh, Rory! So yeah, it is kind of a complication that is haunting me at the moment. But that's the whole joy, right? Is to challenge yourself to find ways of doing it, whether it's the traditional way of doing it or not. Well, like my waves, I don't claim to have invented them, far from. But at the same time, you know, when I asked lots of, you know, people, they kind of didn't know what I meant. And so when I did it, it was kind of like, oh, that's clever. And it's like, really? You've not seen this in other patterns? Because I've seen it. And that's the thing, is I know but I've only seen it in a really short kind of, where's my scissors? Because these ends get tied up and mess with my elastic bands. You know, it is. So I don't know. I feel kind of out on my own, having to reinvent the wheel a little bit, which is frankly a little bit daft, given that it's 2025. You know, basically there isn't anywhere on the globe that can't be reached by some level of internet. How have we still got information that can't be shared, that people are hiding from the rest of the world? Now, you know, Because not everyone can do the traipse up the mountain and spend 20 years learning to be some form of monk or whatever, just to be let in on the in secret. And it's information that will be lost if we do that. So can we not? And that's my concern is, you know, I'm worried that information like that will be lost because, you know, it does seem that many of the younger generations, and it makes me feel really old to say that, but many of the younger generations are not interested in crafting. And, you know, when I did karate, I had a class of 20 kids, and not one parent knew how to sew a piece of fabric onto another piece of fabric. Not one. None of the kids knew, none of the parents knew. They didn't have the faintest idea. Even, you know, to do a really shitty job, they had no faintest clue how to even remotely go about attaching one piece of cloth to another by putting a badge on it. And it frightens me because, of course, back in the day, you sewed buttons on, you took hems up, you took hems down, you took clothes in, you took clothes out again. You know, as kids grew and all the rest of it, you bought it too big, you took it in, and then when they grew, you let it out again. We don't do any of that now. We go down Primark, we pay £1 for a jumper and call it quits. It is kind of one of those problems, is that we need to be more sharing as a world. Or it's not too surprising that things die out. I mean, I've been a bit sensitive about history and... Hang on, I need to take my ear out, hang on. Because it makes my ears itch. Because even in my lifetime, history has been lost. And I know this because my granddad did something impressive during the Battle of Britain. I don't know what it was because he wouldn't talk about it. But now him and his wife have died, as have basically anyone else who was around at that time. And I know that the army records the RAF records for it have also been lost because there was a fire. Nobody knows what he did for a particular medal that he got that was a, you know, really important thing. So if that can happen in my lifetime, what has happened throughout the course of history? How much have we lost? I mean, if you think of how Stonehenge was built, how the pyramids were built, you know, they've got speculation, how the Aztec temples were built. You know, we all know that there's speculation and, you know, to a large extent, a lot of slavery went into it. But it doesn't explain everything. I mean, there was a TV programme quite a few years ago now on how they could have built the pyramids. And if they did it using a form of ramp, the ramp to make some of those top stones make it to the top so that even, you know, a crap ton of people pulling it could move it. Bear in mind, all they had really was sand. So, you know, while it's conducive to movement, it's not conducive to grip of people pulling it. They worked out it was like 10-mile long ramps or something ridiculous. And you're going, well, it's not really that practical, is it? So, you know, if we can't work out how the Mayans worked out the calendars, how, you know, the Egyptians managed to make their temples in such a manner that Abyssimbel, originally, you know, Pharaoh, whatever his name is, who's buried there, forget which, it's been a good few years since I went, his tomb, he sat in the middle, you know, statue-wise, in the middle of the tomb, and it was devised that basically on his birthday, the sun would strike his statue. the mathematical calculations in that, phenomenal. And, you know, it's so we do need to respect a lot more of history and how so much of it is going to get lost if we do not share it. And, you know, there's lots of memes on TikTok-y type short video things, where, you know, kids are almost like, what's this cursive thing? Well, we all had to learn that. You know, long division, long multiplication. We had to learn that. And, you know, if they're not teaching that anymore, what am I teaching? But, you know, it kind of begs the question, well, you know, in 10 years' time, what will they be doing? Because while we have got computers to do it all for us, in a power cut, how are you going to work some stuff out? Come the nuclear holocaust or whatever, you know, how are we going to work anything out if everything has been wiped out? I mean, I have an Alexa device, and I'm not going to say I can't live without her, but I've grown really accustomed to having it. So I have routines for it. I've got, you know, light bulbs on it. I've got my alarms on it for getting up in the morning. Well, then, at some point, what if it goes wrong? Now, I have 2 alarms in the morning. One is on my phone, one is on bitch face, so that, you know, should one not be working, there's always the other, so that I will not ever have to do the sorry boss, my alarm didn't happen kind of crap. I can easily go back to sleep, and I have, and I've had some near misses, but it is that kind of aspect of, you know, how can we be in a society where we no longer teach the fundamental of why something works? We just blindly accept that it does and move on. And, you know, we no longer teach why it works. We just say, well, if you want to work out how this is, press this in your calculator in this order, and out will come the answer. Well, it's not really an answer, is it? Because someone's got to make the thing that does it. And, you know, it's like, you don't really hear of many stonemasons. You don't really hear of many farriers. Now, there are some. Of course there are. But, you know, they've gone from being almost in every village to, you know, rare as hen's teeth, frankly. So yes, I do encourage people to share their skills for, you know, while this is not a teaching set streams, because it is not directly here for people to learn, it's also not here for people not to learn. And I have stopped and explained what I'm doing to people, and, you know, explaining how I know what to do next, and, you know, some of the differences between the laces. And, you know, it's not because I'm great at it, but I'm happy to share what I know. And so to have people out there who are making money off the internet, but not actually doing that, but, you know, and gatekeeping that information. But it's not like they're having private lessons where they teach people. It is a flex of, well, I know how that's done. Well, that's really nice for you, but if you're not going to share, it's kind of lost knowledge. It's, you know, we'll kiss it goodbye, because should something happen to you, that's gone, all right? You've not shared it with anybody else, that ripple dies with you. That ripple of knowledge is no longer something other people can appreciate. And I don't want it to be that way. And I think that is a large part of what has always drawn me to many of the hobbies that I am involved in, is I do them because other people don't. I do them because I don't want that knowledge to die. Now, I am capable of many more hobbies than you will ever get to see, and I certainly do not have time to do half of them, even a quarter of the amount of time that I want. But it's still in my head, and I hang out on various places, you know, trying to help out with sharing some knowledge, you know, this didn't work, what did I do wrong, kind of thing. Or I'm trying to do this and it doesn't seem to be working, have you tried, right? But we shouldn't. Why is it that you've got to drag it out of people, most people? One of the things that I really struggled with when I first moved up here was my brain woke up one day, as my brain does, as you know, saying, I want to. And at this point, it wanted to crochet. And once it had mastered basic general crochet, it wanted to do Tunisian crochet. Because it liked the blankets, the shapes of the stitches, and the textures that you could make with not a lot of effort. And I was really captivated by this. And there were a group at the time, I don't know if they're still about, but there were a group at the time, because Yahoo groups was very much a thing then. But they had this group, and they were convinced like they had invented something new. But it was standard Tunisian crochet. But they had these hooks that were made by a man and wife, and they weren't really anything special. They were just long hooks made out of cheap wood, and nothing more than that. But they acted like these people had discovered, you know, the second coming of Christ. It really was. It was almost a cult. And these people broke copyright on a almost by a minute basis. And they were very upset with me one time when I pointed out that, oh, well, can you show me, you know, I want to do this. Here's some pictures taken out of a book that's copyright, obviously. Here's some pictures taken out of a book. Here's a picture from, you know, this. Here's how to reproduce somebody's logo in this. And it's like, well, but that's against copyright. No, it's not. Well, it is. You know, if you made Disney characters, for want of a better word, and sold them, I can guarantee you now, Disney would come for you, right? Especially if you made any decent money doing it. And sometimes I think that's the problem, is that because you can make a small, you know, for sake of the argument, let's say I managed to make a Mickey Mouse shaped thing in my lace making, right? I could make a number of bookmarks and sell them before anyone would even likely ever notice, right? Especially if it was word of mouth. If it appeared for like 10 seconds in a video somewhere and you had to drop me an email, so it was all kind of not done, not like an Etsy shop or something, that it was all done kind of, not under the hood, but kind of, right? Because there would not be a big sign saying, buy your Mickey Mouse bookmark here, or whatever it is, right? Chances are it would go undiscovered for quite a while. But Disney would still come for me. I mean, Nintendo are apparently really hot on dragging people down for using any of their kind of potential information. They will happily take them to court for millions, even though it only costs you 20p, right? And that doesn't look right. There's something not right going on here. That line there doesn't look right. It's because that is an extra. There was a loop of thread around the pin, so you get back in there like that, like this. That's better. Anyway, so it is always very difficult, but these people really were angry like hornets because I dared infer that it's just Tunisian. No, it's this. No, you're really missing the point. I could call this a wiggle. It doesn't make it not a bobbin. It's just because I call it a wiggle doesn't make it any different. And the stitches they were doing and the way they were doing it, everything was already a known term, and it was called Tunisian simple stitch, right? And it just frustrated me that these people got really angry to the point, they were threatening my life because I'd suggested that it's just Tunisian and that there's actually already a book with 101 Tunisian stitches that you can buy on Amazon that you could follow. No, we can't. It's completely different. No, it's not. It's exactly the same. But of course, because they were fanboys of, the work, and I'm not saying that the hooks were horrible or anything of the sort, but because they were obviously very much in support of the husband and wife who were doing it, and I don't disagree with that, I really don't, but to the point of blindness to the fact that it was not something new. It was, how dare you say something against our beloved whatever, and you must be evil because you've said it's not 100% special. No, I've just said that it happens to be the same as this. And that basically someone beat you to it, by about 100 years. It's... Thank you for that. I think for me it's always been disappointing when people like to pretend that they are just so much better than anybody else because of privilege. And if you've had the privilege of going around Europe on a lace making thing paid for by other people, lucky you. I don't remember there ever being an advert up saying, are you interested in doing it? Would you like to be? No. So it comes over more like Daddy flexed his wallet. No, I'm not saying he did. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. And I'm sure Daddy didn't have anything to do with it. Maybe, well, I'm not convinced Daddy had something to do with it. But it comes over more of the... It's a bit like when you see... Like Will Smith, his kid was the main kid in Karate, the remake of Karate Kid. Do you really think that kid would have been the main kid in Karate Kid if he wasn't Will Smith's son? Sorry, I'm listening to something. And it's this 5-year-old kid who wants in on a game that we've all been playing. We play Monsters and Memories, and and the guy running it said, "Just don't let him read chat." And it's kind of like, yeah, gets a little bit carried away, I think is the best phrase. That's not right. That's not right somewhere. Right, I think I've done a good chunk today. Not the most chunk of chunkness, but I now need to push down a buttload of pins, so I think that's all of them. All of the edges, anyway. I'll have to check, but there we go. We have done not the most exciting part of stuff today, but we've done a chunk. Obviously I did a bit before I got on stream, so to be fair, when I left yesterday we'd kind of done this corner and now we've done all of this bit, so I have been busy today, maybe not as much on stream as you'd like, but that is the way of the experiment. But I've got itchings to go and play games and I'm hungry, so I need to put some food on, and I need to hug the dogs and do all of those kind of things. So it is Wednesday today, I believe. Can't believe 2 of my paid time off days have gone already, but they have. So moving on till tomorrow. I shall be back tomorrow, and hopefully I will see you there. Take care. Thanks, Naughty Kelp. Big hugs to everybody. Bye bye.